بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. And good morning, all of you. My name is Khalfan Abdullah. I'm a consultant for Abrar Consult, as well as a head of product development and Sharia compliance at SAB Najah. I take this opportunity to welcome all of you to this session, where the topic is a case for licensing of an Islamic securities exchange in Kenya. We are glad to have with us Amina to share with us the presentation of the day. We really appreciate her making time for sharing with us this subject today. Without taking much time, I'll welcome her to briefly introduce herself and take us through what she has prepared for us. Amina, most welcome.
Thank you so much, Khalfan. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Thank you, Abrar Consult, for the work you do in fostering Islamic finance. And it's an honor to be here to discuss this this presentation. I'll be focusing on creating a case for the licensing of Islamic Securities Exchange in Kenya. Currently, we only have one licensed securities exchange, which is the Nairobi Securities Exchange. And so, maybe briefly, my name is Amina Omar, an advocate of the High Court of Kenya. My practice is in corporate law, corporate governance, across all sectors. I'm currently the CEO, Lamu County Public Service Board. In my presentation, I'll be focusing on uh, why we should have an Islamic securities market, what is the uniqueness in Islamic finance, the products, I'll mention them briefly, that we have that are alongside or in addition to the conventional ones that we have in the conventional market. We look at the regulatory framework for Kenya capital markets currently. We will have a short comparative study, just look at other countries that have pioneered and are spearheading Islamic securities market, how they are performing and what is the impact to their economy. And then finally, I will just have some few recommendations and conclusions. Next. So, as an introduction, what is Islamic Securities Exchange? This is a market platform where all listed securities and financial products comply fully with Sharia law. And this means that there's no interest, um, which is riba. And riba is an addition of multiple assets or values that may result in an unfair transaction. There is no gharar, ambiguity in the substance of the agreements that are underpin financial transactions. There is no there is no parties do not involve in activities that are considered haram. So essentially, the Islamic finance and Islamic financial products fully comply with the provisions of Islamic law. So we also maybe just I have to mention on the onset that the governance of Islamic finance is grounded on Islamic law, which is derived from the Quran and Sharia. And that's why I just listed that it prohibits, and whatever is prohibited is very clear: riba and compliance with the Sharia law and avoidance of any kinds of speculative ventures. Now, why is it important in Kenya right now? Why do we feel like we need Islamic finance? Yet we already have a lot going on. So, statistic-wise, since 2005, Kenya has experienced a steady growth in Islamic finance, starting with the launch of Absa Bank's Lariba account. But then over time, we have seen right now three fully fledged Islamic banks. Premier Bank, which was formerly First Community Bank, Gulf Bank, Dubai Islamic Bank. We have a lot of upcoming Islamic fund managers. We have several Islamic rates. So essentially, there are several products that are upcoming alongside what we have currently, and this indicates the clear need of Islamic finance. So, uh, my discussion will be centering around the legal regulatory framework that we have currently that govern Islamic finance. Whatever we have currently in terms of the regulatory framework uh, is into Islamic finance and specifically the growth of Islamic capital market. So we note that over time there has been regulations, for example, the capital markets Islamic securities regulations that attend to the specific requirements in terms of compliance, Sharia compliance of products that are launched. But then the question is, are these provisions sufficient, or because of the lack of a fully fledged regulatory framework for Islamic finance, is there a hindrance for the growth of Islamic capital market, and what is the impact of this hindrance? So what we are hypothesizing in this discussion is that there are statutory gaps and that these gaps have caused stagnation of financial markets, and that finally the financial markets laws should be revised to include provisions that are favorable to the evolution of and growth of financial markets in Kenya. Next. Now, why is this discussion necessary? Of course, because we are talking about licensing, then regulatory framework is normally underpinned on legal theories. So for me, I felt and I feel that legal pluralism is the best to argue this case. And the reason is that this theory centers on the debate between the primacy of state law versus non-state alternatives that are demonstrated through levels of law and social norms. And I would again mention that the legal fabric of Kenyan law comprises of course, the Constitution, which is the supreme law. We have statutory laws, international laws, customary laws, and other laws that are intersecting in various ways. We have the Qadhi's courts, the acknowledgement of Islamic law. So legal pluralism offers a clear pathway to resolve this conflict um, through recognition of this normative plurality, that Islam is part of the is part of Kenya, and the acknowledgement that the provisions are different is a clear and valid legal principle to indicate that even with the different principles that underpin Islam, the Islamic law and the conventional law can still coexist within a unified regulatory framework. So essentially, with legal pluralism, it serves an exceptionally robust framework uh, in terms of supporting the hypothesis that even the gaps that are there in security legislation in Kenya can be filled, and that both the conventional finance norms and the Islamic financial principle are both legitimate in their own sense, and that they can coexist in the Kenyan legal system. Next. So in this part, I'll just mention very briefly the products. Next, the products that we have on the Islamic securities market. uh, maybe just screening and the certification of these products. So the first product would be the sukuk, which are typically issued for long-term investments by governments or corporations, and this includes Islamic banks. So there are different kinds of sukuks, asset-backed, asset-based, and the AAO, the organization of is this, sorry, the Accounting and Auditing Organization of Islamic Financial Institutions further classifies sukuks into different categories, just indicating that all these product formulations can be done as so long as they are underpinned under Islamic principles into further products that can be used to be traded on the market. So we have like sukuk ijara, we have partnership based sukuks, we have sell based, and then we have hybrid based sukuks. So in terms of asset screening process, I'll not go much deep into it, but essentially it's levels of screening by the Sharia Advisory Board to just make sure before this product is put in the market, it is compliant to Islamic principles and Islamic Sharia. So I'm going to briefly mention the next product, which is the Sharia compliant equity. And a Sharia compliant equity refers to shares of companies that operate in accordance with Islamic principles determined by Islamic financial advisory boards. And so these companies will be naturally, will not be, for example, number one, engaging in prohibited activities, activities that are not permissible under Islamic law. For example, gambling. They will not for also be engaging in fixed income securities, for example, or trading with convertible notes. And the reason is because both of these have predetermined returns and principal guarantees, and finally that the incomes of these businesses are not going to be from interest or interest-based transactions. So Sharia compliant equities, uh, there's various investment vehicles for Sharia compliant equities, and this I would mention in the next slide would include Sharia compliant mutual funds, Sharia compliant exchange traded funds. Um, um, thank you. So, for example, for Islamic mutual funds, these ones, they act as an investment vehicle that pull resources from investors to create portfolios consisting of several compliant assets. An example locally would be like the Mansa X Sharia, Mansa X, which is a Sharia special uh, fund, multi-asset Islamic fund that SIB invests in equity, sukuk, and other compliant instruments. So the process is the same. The screening process is essentially evaluation of the nature of business, where this fund is going to be invested. Of course, they have to be Sharia compliant, and that for the market price of the companies where these shares, where the investments is done, the market price should exceed its liquid assets per share. So debt is a no factor. Next is a huge factor, sorry. So we have Islamic real estate investment trusts, which are collective investments vehicles focused on real estate investments that align to Sharia principles. So these trusts provide investors with an opportunity to receive stable per unit distributions alongside the potential for long-term capital appreciation. Next, we have Islamic exchange traded funds, which are tools that track specific sectors that represent a collection of securities actively traded on the stock market. So these are just examples of products that we have that can be traded on an Islamic capital market. Now, how does the regulatory framework look like in Kenya currently? Of course, we have the Constitution, which is the supreme law, and in the Constitution, I'll be focusing on just briefly again provisions like Article 10, which touch on good governance, integrity, transparency, accountability, sustainable development. Accountability, sustainable development, and transparency are key in Islamic finance. Article 43 which touches on economic and social rights. Again, access to these platforms like an Islamic capital market expands opportunity for Islamic population to and non-Islamic, non-Muslims to also access financial opportunities. So then Article 43 comes in to expand the right of persons in terms of financial inclusion. So Article 201 touches on public finance principles, which include openness, accountability, which again are underpinning principles for Islamic finance. We have Article 231, which establishes the central bank, as Central Bank of Kenya being the principal regulator of finance in Kenya. We have the Capital Markets Authority. The Capital Markets Act, sorry. The Capital Markets Act is the next one, which plays a crucial role in regulating Kenya's securities market. And when I talk about regulating, I'm looking at it, the Capital Markets Authority undertaking a supervisory role, a licensing role, confirmation whether companies comply to corporate governance principles, a listing role, market development role, investor education and public awareness role. All these fall under the Capital Markets Authority created by the Capital Markets Act. Next. We have the Central Depositories Act. Central depositories are institutions that facilitate immobilization of securities and enable the transfer of ownership through book transfers. So these central depositories are key players in capital markets all over. Next is this Nairobi Securities Exchange, which I'll just mention briefly, and I had mentioned before that it is the only licensed securities exchange in Kenya, and it's the fifth largest in Africa. So we are not doing so badly. It follows Johannesburg Egyptian Exchange, Moroccan Exchange, Nigerian Exchange. So again, briefly, NSC is divided into 4 segments, trading segments, and then these segments the fixed income securities market, which caters for regular and infrastructure bonds, the means, which caters for equities, then we have the alternative investment securities exchange. Next, please. So then why having just mentioned the Nairobi Securities Exchange, why should we then have a conversation on an Islamic securities market or an Islamic capital market? As I had mentioned before, there is an increasing Um, f- Globally, Islamic finance is increasingly gaining traction. And so we are not just looking at this from a Kenyan perspective, but we are looking at this on a global perspective to expand financial inclusion for everybody. And I think if I may just mention the World Bank reports on global Findex database provided that 10% of the population cited religion as a barrier for using banking services. And then when the focus was directed to the OIC countries, these are the this refer to Muslim majority countries, the percentage increased to 24%. So expansion and creation of these Sharia compliant products deal directly with this percentage and or reduces barrier that is there in terms of access to financial financial products. So we have seen, as I had mentioned, we have seen success, and I'm going to just briefly again look at Malaysia as our comparators, Malaysia, UK, and Dubai, just to show why there is now an expansion on financial inclusion for Muslim population, and that the fact that people see the aspect of risk sharing, or, for example, asset-backed financing, which stabilizes markets again, it is a very good attraction to even non-Muslims to invest in such markets. So there is potential for market diversification, and there is a potential for market growth seen again here locally with the current launch that have been done, not one, not two, and even on a global platform. Next. So as a on in terms of comparisons, as I had mentioned, we'll just look at three. Malaysia, and I'm going to talk about Malaysia because Malaysia has emerged as a pioneer in Islamic finance, with its Islamic securities market making significant contributions to the nation's economic development. So there has been a substantial growth, and this is reported um, in terms of its global financial sphere. Malaysia has been at the forefront in terms of spearheading Islamic finance among Asian countries. And notably, even the Malaysian stock market has even been ranked eighth in Asia. So Islamic capital market operates in Malaysia alongside the conventional capital market, serving both capital providers and capital seekers and capital providers. So the nature, next. So in terms of the participants in the Islamic securities market in Malaysia, I'll just again mention briefly, we have the Bank Negara, which is like which is the central bank. We have the Securities Commission Malaysia, which is dedicated to ensuring Malaysia's capital market remains competitive on an international scale. We have Bursa Malaysia, which operates as a principal regulator of the country's capital market. And then again, on the Malaysian financial market, the securities products on the Malaysian financial market, um, the market operates in three segments: the main market, private market, we have the digital market, and then we have uh, fund management segment in Malaysia. So, for example, the main market would be again divided into subsectors depending on the participants on the same. So the UAE operates in the same nature. Again, central bank, the regulator, and then the specific markets. Same as the UK. And in the UK, maybe the products on the financial UK financial market, I would just want to mention, um, other than the sukuk, they have green sukuk, uh, which are designed to fund environmentally sustainable projects. And then this product is of course interest free, but the main focus is environmentally sustainable projects. So essentially, that's it in terms of other markets. The Malaysia, UK, and UAE have in each on its own sphere achieved considerable success, uh, significantly contributing to their economic growth. These markets have focused on developing Sharia compliant products, enforcing stringent listing criteria through, of course, Sharia boards, and establishing strong Sharia governance frameworks. So, again, three aspects in terms of growth of these products and Islamic capital market: the developing of Sharia compliant products, the enforcing of stringent listing criteria that are done through Sharia boards, and establishment of Sharia governance frameworks. Next. So then, what am I saying? I'm saying that you uniquely, sorry, Islamic finance is unique, and it's because of the principles that are underpinning the financial transactions. So we are looking at risk sharing, which is not in the conventional one, asset-backed financing, for example, ethical financing. We are looking at investments that aim to generate not only financial returns, but also delivering positive environmental, social, and governance social and governance outcomes. So the focus is not just on profit. What does the community get in return? So this makes Islamic finance unique in its own nature. We've seen the effectiveness of this in these three countries, with 10 to 12% annual growth in Islamic finance in those particular countries. So on this NSC, I just mentioned four sections, none dedicated purely to Islamic finance. And so then going back to creating a case, if there is no segment, why then should we not license an securities exchange that is purely dedicated to Islamic financial products? Next slide. So then my recommendations would be that this implementation should be in phases. And in the short term, we should most importantly increase awareness and education on Islamic finance. We should encourage partnerships and collaborations, because to integrate Islamic financial products into securities market, there has to be partnerships between Islamic and the conventional financial markets. There should be discussions around and the knowledge sharing in areas such as ethical investments, risk sharing, and all this will help expand the market and increase liquidity, strengthening the overall Kenyan securities market. In the in the mid phase or medium term, we're looking, I'm saying that let us license an Islamic securities market. Of course, given the distinctiveness of Islamic finance. So licensing of this market is very crucial, because this will ensure, like I said, this will ensure that we keep developing products that adhere to Sharia principle. We increase compliance in terms of governance provisions with the help of Sharia boards. Um, and then there is over time standardization of guidelines in terms of issuance, trading, and even settling of Islamic securities. In the long term, uh, I'm calling for continuous research and development in Islamic finance, um, and even strengthening infrastructure by establishing a clearinghouse for Islamic securities. Malaysia has it, why not us? And of course, developing regulatory framework to strengthen the operationability of this securities market. Next slide. Next slide, please. I think I've touched this one. I want to just make my closing remarks. Yes. So, as I close, I'm saying that licensing an Islamic securities market is not just a compliance issue. I know I've been talking about compliance, expansion, inclusion, but it's a strategic opportunity to place Kenya as a regional hub for Islamic finance, um, allow for economic growth and financial inclusion, and of course,
I mean, are you there? Can't hear you.
yes, I am. I just said thank you. Thank you for listening. I'm going to hand over back to you.
Okay, thank you so much for your good presentation. And now it is time for members to ask or contribute to this good discussion that you have opened for us. If I can go first, we know that there will be no possibility for a separate exchange to be licensed in Kenya, or even we haven't seen this in any jurisdiction. So what would be the low-hanging measures that you might suggest the existing exchange, Nairobi Stock Securities Exchange, to do?
Um, Creation of a segment in addition to what we have, the four segments in addition to what we have, can be a low-hanging fruit in terms of strengthening Islamic finance. But just to be clear, it is not an impossibility. I mean, we have the Capital Markets Authority. It's a compliance issue. It's not an impossibility. It's a long-term thing, because even in naturally, even the way these products are supposed to be traded, there are specifications that are unique to Islamic products. So, for example, I'll just use an example. If you trade shares and you want to transfer, for example, sell them. It's not going to be easy because if you use the same platform as other conventional products, then you can't do free transferability of shares because of the uniqueness of the shares that are from Sharia compliant companies. So then you cannot sell, for example, to a EABL and you're from a fintech that is Sharia compliant. And that is again, it will again take us back to a compliance issue. So creating a segment can be a start, a low-hanging fruit, but ultimately having a platform to freely trade is for me uh,
Yeah, yeah. So a segment is a low-hanging fruit for NSE. Long term, you are advocating for a separate platform. But we haven't seen any separate platform in even advanced markets like Malaysia.
No, we have not. You're very right. We've not. And the reason is Islamic finance is growing. Islamic securities markets are growing. So over time, we've not seen, for example, a standardized guideline in terms of listing, in terms of licensing. And that's why I'm saying we have a gap. What we need to do is walk forward and fill in these gaps. And over time, um, strengthen the framework that we have.
All right, that's much appreciated. I think on the segment side, there are some measures that can be taken by the NSE, and at least to be on the uh, on the level that other markets already are. So, for example, at the NSE, they can introduce um, clearly stocks or products that are Sharia compliant from their diverse range of instruments or securities that are there. And this might just require a methodological approach to say or to select those which are and those which are not for the public to be aware that we have these securities that are aligned to your faith, either at the stock or a bond or other or on other securities that are there. And to me, I think this is something that can be just done in a very short time. We have a lot of expertise, or this expertise can be quickly acquired in order to actualize this. We tend to normally get these questions as to which stocks or which instrument or securities are Sharia compliant at NSE. And I think it will be good for NSE to institute the methodology or partner with the private sector that have this methodology to be able to list securities which are Sharia compliant in their platform. Whereas we are seeing this in Malaysia, the security exchange in Malaysia and in other parts of the world have this publication. They have a section on publication which clearly shows instruments that are Sharia compliant within the exchange. So that could be one of the steps that are recommended to be there as we chart forward to look at the bigger picture of how separate Islamic exchange can be. I mean, as somebody would argue that to have an exchange, just the current exchange we are having doesn't seem to be very robust. There are not many securities. then how would that justify to have a separate exchange, given that you don't have very active exchanges, even in the convention one that is there, it's not that robust, and so on. What would be your response to this?
I would say that essentially, I don't think the status of in terms of how it operates and how active per se it is right now is pegged on the regulatory frameworks. For the conventional market, we have a lot of robust provisions that cater for the capital markets in Kenya. So the laws are not the issue. Um, Maybe the how the Nairobi securities market is run may be the issue. But we have proper laws, we have good laws, we have good regulations, we have strong regulations that cater for products on the Nairobi securities market. So the performance of the market, but remember, Halfan, I just said that Kenya has we are number 5. So again, we're not doing badly even in Africa. But the robustness in terms of operations or the output is not pegged on the laws. The output might have other factors uh, that affect it negatively. But I don't think laws play a role there. Yeah.
Yeah, I was not on the side of the law. I was on the side of operationalization of the exchange. As you know, an exchange is a firm of its own. It requires to have team, okay, the team, people, systems for it to function. As you know, for example, even at NSE, you have an online trading systems where an investor can buy and sell stock at the comfort of his desk. You see, so I was wondering how, um, given the securities that are even in conventional, you find that even the NSE itself as a firm, it's not that very robust in terms of players, listing, and so on. And then when you have an Islamic one, again, definitely the listing or the securities might be, again, very fewer, but you have the cost of operating the exchange in either way. So those are things that might need to be thoroughly looked upon in future. Maybe see how to also have cross listings of stocks, Sharia compliant stocks from different jurisdictions to bring them to East Africa. That maybe would also make it very interesting to enable or Kenya position itself as an Islamic, setting up Islamic Security Exchange where there are a lot of offshore listings of Islamic securities that can be accessed just here in Kenyan currency or US dollar. So people don't have to strive to look at the Dubai or this Malaysia or something like that. My thought to justify or to strategize and to try to look at how the cost versus the benefits of having this exchange as a separate entity in the long term. But still, these are food for thought. I don't know if you have any suggestion or any inputs to add to.
Um, Thank you so much, Khalfan, for saying that because what you just mentioned, these are like governance framework. Governance is wide. How the market operates, uh, what is driving for example, listing and etc. So all these things you're mentioning cover governance of this market. So if we again over time, and I feel it's something that, like you mentioned, needs to be explored just to stress capitalization of public awareness. So these are progressive things that need to be done, not just on like one-off. They have to be continuous because it's a long-term thing. Attaining proper and strong governance frameworks take time, but you have to start from somewhere.
All right, that's that's great. And just to add on the possibility of cross-listing, I know we have ABSA New Gold ETF, for example, which is Sharia compliant, listed in South African Stock Exchange and cross-listed here at the Nairobi Stock Exchange. So it's a matter of proactiveness and leadership plus proper governance frameworks that can unlock existence of many securities coming to our region and make our exchanges more robust. So I don't know if members present have any contribution or question to ask. Ruwaida,
Assalamu alaikum and good morning.
salam.
Thank you. Thank you, Amina, for this insightful presentation. Mashallah, it's very forward-looking to see different stakeholders coming up and trying to bring solutions to the current challenges that we're facing in matters Islamic finance. My contribution or my ask will be now again, how do we move forward from this? I know this is among something that needs now to be taken forward, like stakeholder engagement, so that these discussions can start coming up. I know in Kenya there are many players in the market, not only in Islamic banks. We have SACCOs, we have pension funds, we have fund managers, but the challenge has truly been on the governance and trying to have windows which now push this conversation going forward, because we know these are among the challenges that we're facing. So my question is again, we've been in the market for quite some times, but how do we now push forward to ensure that stakeholders are aware of the challenges that we're facing, of the solutions that we have in place, so as again to better create awareness, because one of the challenges has also been liquidity management for Islamic finance institution, looking for avenues where companies or organization can invest in. Again, how do we bridge the gap in terms of awareness? Because people are looking into investments, but not many are aware that we even have listed securities that are Sharia compliant. Yeah, that's my question. But it has been very insightful from your presentation. It's forward looking. Nothing is impossible if we engage now with the relevant stakeholders and bring these solutions into place. Thank you.
Rada, thank you so much for your comments. I'm going to pick up from your last statement, and you just talked about stakeholder engagement. Um, Stakeholder engagement is the first, actually, it's actually, for me, it opens up the conversation around Islamic finance and the conversation around Islamic securities market. The beauty about this is there's so much interest right now. And and even other than the fact that there are several people who want to spearhead this conversation forward, we note, like, just from what you mentioned, that an Islamic securities market or these products, Islamic compliant Sharia compliant products on a securities market is a solution to these liquidity issues that Islamic banks are facing. Okay, so it's literally we are saying let us steer the wheel forward. Okay, because we have the opportunities, can we harness them? That's what I'm talking about. And the current chair to Capital Markets Authority, Mr. Ugas Sheikh, is a Muslim, and there's several different actions that we've seen taking place at the Nairobi securities market in terms of spearheading Islamic finance. So I'm very positive about this. There are more people stakeholders coming in on board, and so let's keep the conversation going, increase public awareness. I want to thank Khalfan for spearheading conversations around Islamic finance, Islamic products, what is there in the market, and why people should invest in these products that are already there. Yeah, thank you.
Uh, Thank you, Amina. Maybe just a follow-up question on your comments. So, how can we ensure that all practitioners are aware of the trends or the developments that are going around in different segments of Islamic finance? Probably there's some, as you've mentioned, there are some developments that are going around in matters CMA. How can other practitioners be aware that these are the steps that are currently going on, these are the challenges? Because the information is like information trickling down is maybe the challenge that we are facing, so that we normally see like there's not much that is going on in matters stakeholders engagement. Are there avenues that normally take place, maybe participation, I don't know, webinars, seminars, or maybe workshops that bring around all stakeholders, and we get to know the developments that are taking place in different organizations. Thank you.
Rueda, Khalfan, I think, is one of the stakeholders that is pushing for these conversations, of course, through Abrar Consult, conversations around Islamic finance. So interest is created, information sharing is encouraged, but then you will see, let's say, institutions like SIB Bank. I think they have webinars very often just to discuss the products that are there, any advancements that happen. So I agree. I think there needs to be a network, and I'm going to request Khalfan to make a comment on that. A network that shares progress or advancements in terms of Islamic finance in Kenya and globally.
All right, we have come to almost an end of today's this session. What we have so far in Kenya are different players, and of recently there is an association that was established, Association of Sharia Compliant Service Providers, which is basically have an objective of a further engagements, enhanced conversation with policyholders in order to have proper frameworks that can cement and put the playing field leveled to all other stakeholders, but also champion the growth of the sector. So We have been seeing these kind of initiatives that are happening on our side as an uh, education and advisory firm. We also do this kind of sessions for awareness, and we had invited NSE members from NSE Capital Markets. Perhaps they will get the recording in order to get to see this how this conversation has been and where we are seeing opportunities and maybe the bigger picture where we need to be. That being said, I take this opportunity once again to thank you, Amina, for your time and also to the participants for your passions, listening to us from the beginning up to here. I don't have much to add. Just a few seconds, Amina, if you want to conclude.
Maybe in conclusion, just request that we keep this conversation going. Let's expand public awareness and let's include more people in this. Thank you so much, Khalfan, for the opportunity.
That being said, we come to an end of this session, and I wish you a good morning and weekend ahead. Bye bye for now. Until we meet again. Ma salam. Bye bye. We'll close now.